Welcome back to the Boundary Corner podcast. I'm Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler, buddy. Hump day evening. How you doing, man?
Hump day evening. I'm enjoying the fighting lager.
There you go. Throwing back a little bit of Hardywood's finest, or at least Hardywood's finest Hokie.
Hardywood's finest Hokie. Throwing back a little beer. Relaxing. Grilled some pork chops tonight on the grill.
Hey.
Can't. Big, thick old pork chops, man. You cannot beat with a nice little grilling action. You know, I've had 2 days of just like come get off work and do nothing. So
there you go.
I don't know what to do with myself.
I've been soaking in the playoff baseball atmosphere, so that's been.
I have been doing that.
Yeah, that's been my go-to in the evening. Get
a break.
It's been
tonight.
nice. Yeah, a little break tonight.
Little break tonight.
Congrats to the Bravos and the Sox.
Absolutely.
Moving on to the ALCS and NLCS respectively.
In years where I don't think anybody would have expected either of those teams to make it. I mean, for real. Like when the injuries you guys had, and you know when you say Boston's going to make it, but Chris Sale's going to pitch a month of the season, people like nah, y'all aren't going to do it, but they made it. What it shows you though about baseball, as if in every other sport, if you draft good players or get good young players and develop them, you will win games.
Yep.
And that's what the Braves have done for the last few years. And if you start looking at the Sox, that's what it is there. You know, when they traded Mookie and got Verdugo and Kike, like you knew they were good, solid players. And you knew between Devers and Bogarts and some of the kids in the pen and Evaldi, guys who they developed in the system or traded for when they were younger. It player development. That's why the Braves and the Red Sox are in the CS Championship Series.
And the Braves have such a good young core, and then two of those guys go down with season-ending injuries before the All-Star break.
Exactly.
And we completely patchworked that thing together before the trade deadline and just kept it moving.
Well, y'all were under 500 at the beginning of August. Y'all went on a tear.
Yeah, it was a big tear. It was a big tear.
It was a huge tear.
We were flirting with 500 pretty much from May until August, and then we finally got over the hump. And once we were there, we more or less kind of handled business as we closed it out there. Had like one or two series where we didn't play well, but more or less we were able to take most of the series down the stretch. Swept a couple in theirs, and swept the big one at the end there to close it out against the Phillies. So
Yeah, and 15 games over 500 with as many injuries as you guys had is unbelievable, man. So we continue as we record. If you see the heads move, you guys will know why, but not tonight. And you guys will find out what 100-burger team y'all play. And what's your preference, Dodgers or Giants?
I think we match up better against the Giants.
Yeah, I'd say so. Even though revenge would be sweet.
Revenge would be sweet, I think, just in terms of matchups and overall top to bottom. And I just think it's a better matchup for us. But, we'll see how it goes.
Absolutely.
I'd love nothing better to put it to the Dodgers. So it will be good either way for me.
Either way. So, Brian, watching a little Monday Night Football on Twitter, going back and forth, the John Gruden news breaks.
Yep.
Ooh, and every joke went, what lasts longer, this game or John Gruden getting fired or resigning? If you took the John Gruden resigning or getting fired, you were right. 10 years ago, company emails, some of the crap that was said, man, you just don't say that. It's just wrong.
You don't say that full stop. You definitely don't say that in company emails that, are subject to shit like this. Like,
but as long as it was, and as much as, he resigned, he didn't fight it, and he's getting, essentially washed away, which is one of those sad things because people can make mistakes, say things, and still change, and et cetera, et cetera. But my piece is this. They're saying that they can't release any emails or find any emails on the Redskins investigation. I think that's bull.
Yeah. I mean, you've got stuff coming out with all that stuff that even Schefter was sending over to Bruce, and like, how is nothing else coming out? Like
it's there. Somebody's got it.
Yeah,
somebody's going to be dropping hammers. Because
I can't wait.
Think about that investigation. That investigation ended. It was a point made on the radio here in Richmond. That investigation was concluded. Do you remember when it was concluded, Brian? Because the point that was made is funny. It was made July 2nd. July 2nd, the weekend before July 4th. What happens normally Fridays before holidays in most corporate workplaces?
Holidays.
You leave early.
Leave early.
Right? You're going by lunch. Between lunch and 2, everybody's out of the office. People are gone. What happened Monday? Everybody had the federal holiday because the 4th was on a Sunday. So they break that news then. People start talking about it Tuesday, but by Tuesday, it's like, who gives a crap? Yeah, whatever. And now
they took the Friday dump to like the complete.
Oh, they took it to 10.
Exponential level there.
Unbelievable. So the question is, what additional comes out? And now you're having people who was involved in that, especially after Jay Gruden, who had been there for all those years, said, oh, yeah, I was never interviewed. Nobody ever talked to me. It's like, huh? So I think more is going to come out. And I tell you, whoever's got that info, you get a feeling that they're going to start leaking it.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of Washington football team fans that would love nothing more than for Snyder to have to wave bye to this franchise.
Oh yeah,
and it would be even more just desserts considering some of the shit that was happening, especially around the early, really around the labor, the labor situation. Like they were playing a lot of shenanigans at that point anyway.
Absolutely. All right, Brian. Let me tell you what really grinds my gears about polls.
What you got, man?
Alabama was the number 1 team in the country, undefeated. Went into Texas A&M. Was Texas A&M undefeated, Brian?
No, they were not.
Were they even ranked in the top 25?
No.
Were they over 500?
No.
No. But they lose. If you didn't watch the end of that game, after if you couldn't, I could stomach it. Watch the end of the Hokie game. Me and Brian jabbed a couple minutes, and then I watched the end of that. You would expect normally, if this was any other conference, any other team, how many spots would you have expected them to fall, losing to a 500 team unranked, even though it was on the road?
They'd at least drop to 8 or higher.
Well, they dropped to 5. They dropped 4 spots.
Yeah.
They essentially gave them the same treatment that Penn State got. Penn State, who was 4, who is now 7 or 8, I've got to look back at the polls, who lost to the number 3 team by a field goal on the road.
Yep.
As well. I hate the polls. You hate them at the beginning. I hate them for these reasons. When certain teams get favorable treatment if they lose a game.
I mean, at this point, I don't know if this is SEC bias or just Alabama bias that's coming into play here.
It's some bias, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I get that Alabama on paper is still probably one of the 2 best teams in the country. I get that, but you still got to win the games. You don't get to have favorable treatment just because on paper that's how it works. Because football isn't played on paper. You still got to go out and win the game.
It's true.
You shouldn't penalize other teams that are taking care of their business just because another team is top to bottom the best roster and they've got one of the best coaches of all time. Like you can't you can't live off of that in the polls. It has to be week to week and what they actually do on the field.
It needs to be concrete. It doesn't need to be whataboutisms or hypotheticals. Well, hypothetically, they're the best team. So hypothetically, if they lost 4 games, would you still put them in the playoffs? The honest truth, there would be somebody on that committee that would say, well, they only lost by a combined 9 points in those 4 games.
They're essentially giving them a mulligan because they know that at some point they're going to have to play Georgia, more than likely. They're essentially giving them a mulligan and saying, okay, well, there's your mulligan. You're going to have to play Georgia at some point. We'll figure this out at that point.
It's true.
Which is bullshit. It's bullshit, but it is what it is.
It's also one of those reasons why we still stand on our hill if we need a 12-team playoff. I mean, it's the reason I die on the hill, because if you're going to start saying that losses are irrelevant, then put more than 4 teams in there. Get more people a chance. And if you're saying losses are irrelevant, then you can potentially, if your bread makers have a pseudo bad season for them, 10 wins, 2 losses, potentially 3 losses, they can still get in. So,
and some of this, I mean, say what you will, it goes back to the money thing, right? I mean,
yes,
it's a big deal to keep Alabama in contention.
It is. They draw eyes. They're like Ohio State. They're like, Oklahoma in a way. It's multiple teams that draw the eyes of the casual public.
Yep.
All right, Brian. Before we jump into Hokie notes here, big news out of Miami. Derek King is done for the year, shoulder injury, on top of essentially recovering ACL. So he's done. He will not be in Coral Gables, Miami Stadium, Hard Rock Cafe at the end of November versus us or against any other team. But he has contemplated coming back for his 7th season.
Yep.
All right, on Sunday, hold on. On Sunday, you said, as of right now, the only game you could see us winning without a shadow of a doubt was Duke. Does it change anything with them losing to Eric King, especially the way they looked a few weeks ago?
I mean, I still put it probably in a toss-up category, but I think it's one that it's a favorable one. At the beginning of the season, I probably had that as a probable loss.
I did.
Seeing how they've looked in general, I was already kind of leaning towards full-on toss-up. I'd probably put that in the toss up with us as being the slight favorite there now. Um, Kind of in the same ballpark as maybe the
Syracuse.
Georgia Tech matchup, maybe the Syracuse matchup. Kind of in that same ballpark at this point. Um, and it's because Derek King kind of made that ship go
Yep.
right. On at least on the offensive side of the ball, and their defense hasn't quite played to the level that we were expecting them to play this year. And coupling that with not having Derek King on that offense, we're starting to see things that we were talking about going into last year again, right, with that
Yep.
offensive line and some of the
Yep.
other struggles that they were having. So,
Well, their defense was expected to be the reason they were so highly ranked, right?
yeah,
Like they were returning so many guys. I mean, they lost some edge presence in Phillips and Roche, but they still had a couple guys behind them. The defense has looked like, and I've watched parts of the Alabama, the App State. I watched part of the UVA. I missed the Michigan State game. That was the day they played that game was just bad time, and I couldn't see any of it. But it looked like that defense gets on the field, and their expectation is, oh, we're the Miami defense, and then they get pumped in the face, and it's like, so, like, what does that matter to us? We don't care if you're the Miami defense.
yeah, and without them having that elite pass rush this year, I mean, you're starting to see they've got elite players on the back end, but kind of remember the one of the big questions we asked before the season is, you are they going to be able to generate enough pressure for them to maximize the
Yeah,
talent they have on the back end? And right now, the answer's been no so far. Them losing, truly three top line edge rushers. I know one didn't play last year for them, but
yeah,
losing three pass rushers off that defense, I mean that's a big deal.
it
All of those
is.
guys are NFL caliber players,
Well, all of them are on
and
roster right now. I
yeah,
mean, all three of them. So,
exactly. So
and
that's been a big deal for them, and they haven't really found a footing where they can put four quarters together on either side of the ball, and some of that goes back to Derek King's injury, and some of that goes back to that defense just not being what it was last year.
exactly. And the honest truth is, for Manny Diaz, obviously the stories are coming out about the president of the university doesn't care about football. The AD does. We discussed it amongst ourselves, with other people. They have the boosters to keep their program afloat and on being fine, regardless if the school says they're not trying to give them anything. But at what point this year does a call or is a call made like he's gone? Go find someone else. Man, he's gone.
Yeah, and I think because there's two things at play here. So number one, they don't necessarily have the support from the university at large, but also because of that, and because they're a private institution, they are primarily, so much of the funds that are coming in have always been that of the private nature, so they can make moves like that on that side without necessarily having to seek the budgetarial approval of the university in the same way that a public institution would. So I could see them going after Manny Diaz. I don't necessarily think that what he's dealing with this year is completely falling at his feet, but it's another example of you can't keep stacking decent recruiting classes. You can't be a team in Florida and continue to put out a mediocre product every year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Brian, let's flip it over to the Hokie notes, a little bit of the press conference, a little bit of things said by Coach Fuente. But let's start with this. Me and Brian got together and watched this for a few minutes. Or we watched the whole thing.
Yeah, it was solid 30, 35 minutes,
35
something like
minutes.
that.
We
Yeah.
watched it. And the first 2 minutes we're watching it, and was it me or you like
I was
pause?
like, he's cracking his knuckles and playing with his wedding ring. He does not want to be up there.
His body language for the majority of that press conference, with the exception of what we're going to talk about at the end with the targeting, he was uncomfortable. It looked terrible. He even had a few quips with Mike Nizolik. I know you got to ask it. Well, at least act. You don't have to say that. Like he looked so bad up there, and it's kind of a good self portrait to say, well, this is where we are.
Yep.
It's a lot of uncomfortableness. It's a lot of cracking knuckles. It's playing with wedding rings. And for any of you guys who are married, I do it watching games, movies that I haven't seen that are suspenseful. I'm playing with my ring. It's just a common thing. So as soon as you saw that, it's like he ain't in the best headspace as of this moment.
Yeah, I mean, just looked like he was, fidgeting a lot, and I think it was just I'd like to be other places than here. And I can understand that. I mean,
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we can start out. I know he didn't get to this right away, but when we talk about the decisions to go for two and not to go for two, he definitely took some ownership of that choice, even though he said, from his he said his way of going about those things is probably more traditional than what the statisticians would probably advise.
Yeah.
And the thing was, if you go by the book said you don't go for two when we went for two, and then if you went for two there, you go for two again when you score
Again later.
later, right?
Yeah, you go for two in either spot, because if you get both, if you get one, not the other, essentially you're up more than 8, and it's a 2-score game. And again,
yeah. Well, 8 doesn't necessarily help you. I mean, 8 does force a you have to get a 2, but the other team has to get a 2. But at the same time, if you're up 7, they're not going for 2 unless they're completely going full on.
But what it does, you said it aloud to me after he talked about it. What it does is if you get that 2 and you get to 9, one way or the other.
Yep.
Especially after we were up 7 and can go up 8, you go for 2. Is you sit there and say, if we go for 2 here and we get to 9, even if they go score and they get the 2-point conversion,
which they don't have to take, they'll probably still just kick the 1.
They'll probably kick it, but at that point in time, you can essentially run the ball 3 times. Even though they didn't use their timeouts, you still force a timeout. You get rid of their timeouts unless they're going to hold them.
Well, it's a different set of play calls, right? It's a different set of play calls. You're not trying to move the ball into field goal range. You're trying to run out the clock. Like that's a completely separate part of the play sheet that you're looking at.
And the other piece, me and you talked about this, how they attacked going downfield to get the field goal, middle of the field. Why?
Yep.
He had 3 timeouts in his back pocket. If somebody got tackled short, burn it. By attacking it, if we had been up 9 and we run and we only take like 12 seconds off the clock, they burn all 3 of their timeouts. Well, now playing the middle of the field is risque. It's risky. You get tackled short. Even if you get tackled and get the guy in the game, if you send somebody way downfield, we talked about it Sunday. Well, now you got to bring everybody back up, and the clock's kicking. So more or less, you're going to have to go outside the numbers, and it makes it more difficult to move downfield. But
it makes it more difficult to move downfield, and it plays to the strengths of our secondary as well.
Yep.
They're throwing into the meat of what our secondary is versus into the middle of the defense, where that's probably the weaker area of our defense is in the middle, right? So
it's absolutely in the middle.
It changes the dynamic of both the of that last drive for them and our last drive.
Absolutely.
So
let's talk about this though. Just something he did talk about. He talked about execution. And we'd heard it before, and you just kind of went into a rant. I didn't have to ask you to pause it. You paused it and went.
Yeah. So, I mean, the big thing that I always harp on is that one-off games, execution can be placed at the feet of players. Players don't always go out and have the best games in terms of execution. Habitual acts of execution errors are 100% on the coaching staff. If you are consistently going out there and not executing, you've done one of three things wrong. Either you didn't recruit the right players, or you didn't prepare them, or there is something going on in your scheme and you're not putting them in a good position to make those plays.
Yeah. And over this time, as many times as we've heard execution, it's like it's on y'all. Don't try to put it on the players. It's on you. You should take the ownership for it. Now, can I say this, Brian? Would you be more accepting of execution type stuff if things had been changed?
Yes, only because you're at that point we'd be talking about a new system, right? We'd be talking about still kind of playing into things, potentially not having the right personnel on campus to run things the way you want to, and that's thinking of bringing in a new offensive coordinator, not Fuente taking over the play calling.
Yeah, that's not that.
If Fuente was taking over the play calling, then those excuses would go out the window.
Potentially they would go out the window. But it's that whole piece is, why do you see guys when they head into a 4 or 5 year deal? And this is in all lines of football. You see them, if things aren't clicking pretty quick, especially year 3 and 4, that's when, all right, you've got to go. You have to leave. We aren't executing. Like, again, you made the point. We can deal with game errors here and there. Consistently unexecuting is not good at all. So,
yep.
And he had the chance. He's had the chance multiple times. He didn't do it. So again, everything is continuously falling on him. I told you a few weeks ago, I'll still throw Brad when he's got to go under the bus. I'll throw him, but it's all for Wednesday now. It's all on him. So he's got to make those decisions, and
he's made the bed at this point, right? Like,
he's made it, yeah.
At this point, Corn is who he is. There's no going back on that. We just have to deal with the consequences of that, and those consequences fall back at Fuente. We did get some other news though, so
yeah.
We were talking about Braxton Burmeister and whether he'd be available, and it turns out he's been 100% full go at practice this week. So
full go.
That's a surprise.
Said he felt good in the interview today. So I'm going to assume, Brian, probably nothing muscle-wise, probably no separated shoulder, probably not even a deep bruise.
Stinger, maybe bone bruise would be the most severe. We'll never know because they don't talk about it.
When we have BB on here in 6 months, we'll find out exactly the story. Want to try?
Mark your calendars, guys.
Mark your calendars.
We did find out that Connor Blumrick is at least going to be out for a while. He did leave open the opportunity for him to potentially return towards the end of the season, but depending on what that injury was, he did say it was a leg injury. That doesn't look good for him. No. I'm guessing it potentially could have been like a bad sprain versus some sort of actual tear in the knee, because it looked like it was the knee area. So could be some sort of MCL sprain or something like that. Those are usually like 6 to 8 week injuries.
Yeah, something significant. A severe sprain of those would definitely, even an LCL, they'd be out for quite some time. Usually it's the MCL. What really sucks is the way they used him Saturday. Say what you will, the incorrect uses of him were terrible. When they used him correctly multiple times, it was an addition to the offense that was helpful.
And it never really got to truly see what Connor, the H-back with Braxton on the field, could have looked like too, because that could have created some interesting matchups against a defense. So I was a little sad we didn't get to see that as well. So we'll see how that continues forward. I guess the other thing we talked about, Fuente talked about, was Dax with the targeting penalty going to be out the first half of Pitt this week
Yep.
as a result of it being into the second half, obviously towards the end of the game in this case. So looks like Dean and Keyshawn are going to get good amount of play this week.
Yep.
Look for probably Keyshawn to get a good amount of play. Although, I'll talk about it a little bit now. This is a great opportunity to, especially with the way Pitt likes to play, essentially riding that true nickel for the majority of the game.
Yeah, like we probably should have did in that last series versus Notre Dame, or the last two series when they had a pass. But Jahan, we love you, but you made a bad mistake. Don't keep doing it. Keyshawn, they said it has been getting the primary ones this week. Keyshawn has been with the system a little longer than Dean. He's a little bit older, a little more experienced. And, it's still tough because middle linebacker, whether coming in cold or with a week of prep, has to make all the calls, has to put everybody in position. And that's sort of that's the part that we missed the most on Dax. Even in those last few drives, was getting people lined up right. The middle pass that was the big gainer. Argue all you want up and down that could Dax have covered a wide receiver. Well, if Dax is in the game, I don't think they call that play. Because if the way I saw it is, if you saw the Tisdale play, Ferguson was hesitant to come up and help clean up that mess. And then the very next play they attacked him.
Yep.
So,
and I think, it's more of a, you smell blood in the water type thing than it was necessarily. Dax is a, head and shoulders above Dean in terms of coverage. Like that's not what I'm talking about here, but you got a cold player coming off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
Most coordinators attack the cold player because regardless of their ability, they might be playing either too hesitant or too loose, and you can take advantage of that.
It's 100%, man. All right, Brian, the targeting call, it was one of those highly questionable calls. Actually, both targeting was Saturday night. And
even the one that worked in our favor, and granted, I think the time it happened and the player it happened to definitely hurt us a whole lot more than it hurt Notre Dame. But
it did.
Both of them were questionable in terms of
malice.
Yes, letter of the law, those were targeting penalties.
Yes.
But neither of them were forceful or intentional contact to the head and neck area.
No, it wasn't. And it's something that I told you, Brian, not long after it happened. Something like this needs to happen to the right team and on the right stage against the right opponent. That's how the change is going to happen. That's how it's going to happen. It's going to be, to me, and when I say right opponent, let's say this year in the playoffs, Georgia plays Michigan or, someone else.
Yep.
And it's a tight game late, and it's second and goal. The guy's going to the corner. The guy does a good football play, but it's target, and he's out. Top linebacker. The other team punches it in, beats Georgia. Georgia's not in the final. That's when things will happen. But during the conversation with Fuente, he made the point about how coaches and stuff had been discussing that there should be a targeting 1 and a targeting 2, much like the flagrant 1 and flagrant 2 in basketball. And listening to that, he got very comfortable. The body language changed when he was talking that. He got very comfortable in it. And he made some really great points.
Yeah, and I'm actually 100% with this because
me too.
I have no problem with any sort of contact to the head neck area. Flag it. That's fine.
Yes.
Because you still want to try to keep that out of the game as much as you can. But penalizing a player that is not purposefully and forcefully initiating that contact, it needs to just stick with the flagrant 1, keep that player in the game. Or even if you're going to do, essentially you get a flagrant 2 or 2 flagrant 1s in a game equals a flagrant 2.
Yes, that's the way it should be. That's the way it honestly should be. Fuente said he felt like they've talked to this at AFCA coaches with officials, and it's just they feel like it just goes into space. And he made the best point he made. Whether you love or hate the guy, it's all your decision. He says the reason it's not happening so quick is nobody wants to be seen as going backwards against player safety. And that's the thing that you have to essentially sell to the officials and the presidents of. It's not going backwards. It's staying status quo,
Yep.
but it's actually not being negative towards just an incidental play.
And you're not just hurting a team either. You're hurting a player's stock. I mean, there's a lot of things that you're hurting here, especially if that player is playing on a big stage at a big moment, and all of a sudden, like if a player is pushing for borderline first round draft status, and they're playing in a college football playoff and they're gone the fifth play of the game. I mean, that's high quality game tape that now they can't put on their resume as at the next level. That's a big deal. And if that ends up costing their team a game, they don't get a chance to put that out there for the next game. So there's real world ramifications for the player itself, not just the team. And it looks like that the main punishment here is that they want to, the team gets punished for a player's choices here and this, that, and the third. And, we want players to be safe and play the game as safely as possible, but at the same time, and this was kind of emphasized, and this has always been my thought on anything, is that doing the right thing is always better than doing whatever the flavor of the week is.
And that's the flavor of the week now is the targeting injection, and I want it to change quicker than anyone because can we just say it? Just say it. That penalty has cost 2 games against Notre Dame. 2 games.
Yeah.
If Waller's playing in 19, I don't think they drive the field on that last drive and win. And I'll say this: if Dax is on the field for that entire drive, I think what happens is probably it's not as quick a drive as it was because they gained 40 yards. 15 off Dax's penalty and 40 off attacking Ferguson. They were at the 35-yard line or 30-yard line when that play happened.
Yeah.
You do the math, that gets them to the 45. You take the 25-yard, they're in red zone pretty quick because of that one play. And again, I think if it's a vice versa play and it affects Notre Dame, maybe this was the time it happened. Yeah. So
hey guys, what we're not saying is that necessarily resulted in Notre Dame winning the game, but it certainly was one of the factors that played a role in that.
Absolutely. All right, so before we get into knowing the enemy, the Pitt Panthers, we are going to take a quick pause for a message from our digital partners.
As we take a quick break, we'd like to tell you about getting your free website report from our digital partner, Grassroots Digital Marketing Studio. They'll tell you how your website ranks on Google, on-site SEO, and social media. No commitment to buy anything. You can get your free report by visiting grassrootsdigitalstudio.com/free-website-report. Now back to the episode.
All right, so let's look at the Pitt Panthers offense, Brian, to start out with. First of all, something I thought I'd never see, Pitt Panthers leading the country in scoring at 52 points a game. 4th in total offense at 455 yards a game. Really good red zone offense. Scored 25 touchdowns out of 32 trips down there. Again, another highly ranked. And if I told you all that, and I told you the first thing on this is the quarterback has had the same offensive coordinator for 3 seasons. Same people teaching the things for 3 seasons, and it's making Kenny effing Pickett a potential Heisman contender, Brian. The 3-star, it's 1,730 yards, 19 touchdowns, 1 pick, 72. The not only the best numbers of his career, I mean, it's leaps and bounds above it. And I know in reality, he really should be on an NFL roster right now because his last year should have been his last year. Say that 5 times fast. But he's here, Brian. What's changing his game from even last year when he did okay?
The big thing that I'm seeing is that it looks like the talent around him has really come into their own a little bit more, and he's doing a really good job of distributing the ball to a lot of different players in that offense and going through his progressions a little bit quicker than he's gone through them in his history so far. So it looks like he's working through his progressions a lot faster, getting the ball to the open man within the framework of the play a lot better than he has in previous years. I mean, and we've seen. I mean, obviously, everyone listening to this knows who Kenny F and Pickett is. And yes, we always say effing or fucking. I mean that
it's literally it's what
we don't really. Not necessarily the animosity isn't so much directed at him, but the fact that he's the quarterback for Pitt and Narduzzi and the whole shebang. He's Kenny fucking Pickett. But I mean, we know what he brings to the table. He's got good athleticism for a primary throw first quarterback.
Yeah.
Probably even a little bit of a step up even from Sam Howell at the athleticism standpoint. Does a really good job on those rollouts. He keeps his eyes downfield, but he knows he has a really good feel of when he needs to kind of turn it upfield and just get what he can. And like I said, he's been delivering the ball to a lot of different receivers, and that's really kind of meant that you can't key on specific players down by down as much. And I think that's really helped him kind of move forward.
All right, let me ask this, Brian. You talked about he's going through his progressions quicker. Being with the same OC, same system, same guy, how easy is that for an OC to come in here and start taking things out of the playbook and say, essentially start changing the wide receiver chart? Like, okay, we're not running this in this combo anymore. Kenny can't read it, but he can read this and this great. He can read a smash hook route. Great. We're going to throw that in this set. So it's been the same guy in his ear the whole time. Probably same plays, same concept, same looks, not rotating cast of characters.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned there a little bit. So one thing, the coordinator has a good feel what Kenny is comfortable with in terms of route combinations. Kenny's got more comfortable overall with all of them. And because he is a veteran quarterback at this point, what he is working on in the offseason is all up here and timing. That's it. He knows the system, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't have to work on that. He's working on this, how to get through it faster, and the timing with those receivers. And the other thing that he's benefiting from is that most of these guys are coming back from last year.
Oh, absolutely.
The guys he's throwing to.
Yeah.
So he already had some comfort with them. He's working on more comfort, and it's just looked a lot smoother this year.
All right, well, let's talk about those guys. Let's talk about Tasir Mack, a two-star when he came out, went to Indiana at first, transferred in December of 17 over to Pitt. So essentially he's been there 3. This is his 4th season with Pickett. 6'2", 190. Interesting place. He played high school football, played in BKNY, played at Brooklyn.
Hey.
So, yeah, you don't see many guys at a D1 level.
Where Brooklyn at?
Yeah. 16 catches for 304 yards for 2 touchdowns, averaging, 19 per reception. And I tell you, Brian, he's had 2 100-plus games, and in both those games, he was right at 25 yards per reception. So I got a feeling you're about to say speed.
Yeah, he's got good speed. He's their deep threat. They also run him a lot on those kind of deep comeback routes where he can catch the ball and kind of turn up field and then use that athleticism in the open field. And they throw also a lot of fades and digs over the middle of the field where he can really kind of plant his foot, turn, and then kind of use that acceleration across the field to get open and make some big plays. Saw him do a couple of those cross-country routes as well. So he's the guy that's going to get the consistent big plays in the offense. But he will occasionally just be a guy that moves the sticks for him. Like I said, they do run those digs and comebacks. So look for him to probably be the guy that they're going to take some shots with.
All right. So the next guy is the guy that's really been lighting it up stat wise. Jordan Addison, already 29 receptions, 524 yards, 3 100-yard games his last 3 games. 6 foot 175. He was a 4-star athlete. In the consistency when he came out for 247, he's probably going to go play defensive back of some type. And he's a top 150 player. He was the number 4 athlete in his class. So this guy obviously athletic as hell. 9 touchdowns, averaging 18 yards per reception with 29, 524. It seems like I look at those numbers, and especially 3 100-yard games already this early in the season, back to back to back. He's probably not a one-trick pony.
No, he's kind of the do-it-all weapon on the offense. They run him on screens, swings, slants. He's got the full complement of the route tree is available to this guy, and they take advantage of it with him. He's a little bit more elusive than fast compared to Mac. He kind of has that shiftiness. They line him up in different places all over the field, and because of his route running ability and ability to really kind of do everything in that offense. So he's the weapon that you really have to keep your eye on, because he will bust a big play on you, but he's also a good stick mover and kind of the guy that Pickett will look for when he's in trouble.
All right. So Mack and Addison look for them on the outside. Now, Brian, do they XY or does Whipple move these guys all around?
Mack is going to primarily be outside. Addison will line up all over the offensive formation.
All right. Now they have another weapon as well. Lucas Kroll. What a journey for this guy. Started out at Arkansas when he came out in 2016, then went to a JUCO. JUCO came out as a top 4 player, the top tight end. Then he went to Florida. Then he finally transferred to Pitt. 6'6", 260, a prototypical, that's an NFL tight end body. He has the size and the height. 15 receptions so far this year, 193 yards and 12.9 per receptions. He scored touchdowns in 4 or 5 games. I'm assuming he is your traditional inline guy.
Yeah, he's kind of the quintessential inline stick mover, guy that uses his size well to create a target for Kenny Pickett on those key downs. He doesn't do anything flashy, but he will kind of be the outlet receiver in a lot of routes. They'll sometimes work him as the primary on like a 3rd and short. And occasionally, I think they threw one gadget play to him where they had a wide receiver throw a kind of a fake screen touchdown to him against, I think it was Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken, when I went back and watched the tape. So,
okay.
Kind of the traditional mold there. Nothing that is, you wouldn't classify him as a joker or anything like that. He is a typical inline guy that, has the hands to, be a threat in the receiving game.
Yeah. And obviously scoring, touchdowns in 4 or 5 games. They obviously aren't afraid to utilize him down in the red zone. And I just think about a guy that size. I mean, we have no one that can match up with that. Now, hopefully his speed and stuff, we make up for it. All right, Brian, let's flip. Let's look at the offensive line. And as much has been talked about, we've talked about the passing.
Yep.
They don't have one set really running back between Davis, Abinanakan, if I pronounced that right, and Rodney Hampton Jr. They all have roughly the same numbers, give or take. Hammond Jr. hadn't played in as many games. But overall, the rushing offense it's not terrible. It's literally middle of the country at 165 a game. They're 65th in the nation. And the line hasn't given up too much. Only 24 tackles for loss, only 8 sacks. Probably more impressive with the sacks is it's under 60 yards. So it's not like they're giving up 10 or 12 yards per sack. Or even in the tackle for loss game, it's only 198 yards. So
Yeah.
overall, their offensive line, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, and a little bit of the running game is a mirage though, because
Oh,
Kenny Pickett is getting a good number of those yards.
okay.
Um, so when you look at Kenny Pickett, in terms of the running game, he's getting a good amount on scrambles. He's getting a good amount on some design runs. So that is skewing the numbers a little bit. When they just line up and hand the ball off to a running back, they do a great job of not getting caught behind the line. So this isn't a Notre Dame situation, but they're not out there gashing you in the run game. It's very much in support of the passing attack. They run the ball. They want to be effective enough in the running game, so you have to honor it so they can throw the ball like they want to.
Yeah, and you're right, Brian Pickett. I'm just pulling up the data here. He is getting about 25 or 26 yards a game, only about under 4 a carry, but take him out, that's down to 140. That's significantly fallen down. So I'm glad you made that point. But what else are we seeing from them? What about pass pro?
So pass, like I said, they like to set up the run, with the pass. They do a good job of protecting Kenny Pickett, especially with it's just like a 4-man pressure. They also do a good job in blitz pickup, but when that is like a delay blitz, that's when you can kind of catch them napping a little bit. If they see it coming, they do a really good job. They diagnose it and they get where they need to be. If they don't know where the pressure's coming from pre-snap, all bets are off a little bit, and that's when you can finally get to Kenny Pickett, because he is hard to sack because of how well they are up front at picking up, the 4-man rush and the pre-snap blitz show.
All right. Well, Brian, before we get into a little data points of players here, what sort of defense are we going to see Saturday with Narduzzi?
It's a familiar defense, buddy. We got a 4-2-5 coming in the house.
Not a shock there. And so far, I'm doing a little thing here. For these stats I'm about to give you, I took out their game against New Hampshire defensively because it skewed it a little bit. And their scoring defense, you take out that game, they're giving up about 26 and a half a game, which is in the mid 70s as far as scoring defenses go.
Yep.
You're giving up about 383 yards a game, which is again mid 70s. And I'm gonna get you some data after Brian goes through these. We go through these players here that we've kind of taken a look at, and it's going to be just a little. You're going to raise your eyebrows and say, "How can you be here if you take out one game, and you're here if you add them all?" It skews. But Brian, let's talk about defensive line first. You got the big clogger in the middle in Keyshawn Camp, 6'4", 290. You've got Baldonado with 3.5 sacks coming off the edge, 6'5", 260. And that's who I kind of was saying to you. What about these guys, Brian? And you said, nope, there's one guy you need to look up, Curtis. Kalasia Cansey, 6 foot, 275, D tackle, 3-star, 10 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss this year. What is the tape saying? Because the stats don't jump out. The body type doesn't jump out, Brian. But what is Cansey doing on tape that is making him kind of the key on that D line?
I'm not going to make this comparison lightly, but it's like shades of Aaron Donald in terms of the way he has a motor inside, the tackles.
All right.
He doesn't jump off the screen in the same way that Aaron Donald does, obviously. So again, this is a comparison, not saying he is that player, that caliber player, but the way he plays inside the tackles is impressive. He impacts the game even when he is not making the play. He is blowing up the line of scrimmage, impacting the angle of the running back, impacting what the offensive line is doing as a unit. He kind of makes the whole defense go and makes the job of the other members of the defensive line and the linebackers defending the run that much easier.
All right, so shades of Aaron Donald. And
just when you look at the body type, when you look at the impact, that was the first thing that jumped off to me. Like I said, I don't think we're looking at that caliber player, but in terms of how he impacts the game, that's the type of player you're looking at.
It's essentially his job is similar to Donald's, and it's probably why you're seeing Baldonado have sacks and Keyshawn Camp have some sacks as well, because of if he's eating that space and he's getting in gaps, essentially there's nowhere to go there with him doing that.
He's a star, but he doesn't have to eat to be the star.
All right, makes sense. All right, let's take a look at the next guy. Let's take a look at John Peterson. 6'1", 225 so far this year, 22 tackles and an interception, couple sacks, and 4 tackles for loss. 7th year, Brian.
Yeah.
7th year. We're going to say that. We've said that quite a few times this year. He was a 3-star who actually originally committed to Penn State, originally from Pittsburgh, transferred back to Pittsburgh as a transfer. And I think you're about to say a familiar position for us.
Yeah, this is a whip, and probably more of a traditional whip than what we have Chamari Connor playing now. It's more true hybrid versus kind of the nickel that Chamari plays on a regular basis. He does it's a very sound player. He does a great job with backside run contain from that position. They blitz him a lot as well. He gets some impact in there, especially on run blitzes. So he's not necessarily a guy that they're bringing after the quarterback a whole ton, but he blew up a big goal line play against Tennessee coming off the edge hard. So they'll bring him a lot in run blitz situations where he can really impact the edge of the defense. And just a solid overall player that, kind of just wears you down a little bit. So nothing flashy, but just somebody to keep an eye on.
All right, nothing flashy, but if he's a guy doing his job, hurts us even more. Now, what about this next guy, Brian? Brandon Hill looks like a safety, 5'11", 195. Leads the team in tackles with 28. Also has a pick in there. Was a 3-star when he came out. What are we seeing from this guy to have so many tackles at the secondary position?
Yeah, he's kind of the cleaner. He's that classic safety that's coming up there and filling on running plays. He is patrolling the middle, kind of that rover position for us. Very similar to that. He kind of rolls to the middle to the back of the defense. Plays really good in zone coverage. They like to drop him inside the box in zone coverage, and he'll make some noise there. Very sure tackler, big hitter in the secondary. He'll lay you out if you come across the middle. And like I said, great in zone coverage. He can be beat when he is in a man situation, so that's one area we could potentially take advantage of there. But he's also the one that picked off Hendon Hooker against Tennessee to kind of close that game out there.
All right, so again, not only a guy that can obviously clean up the run, not afraid to stick his head in there, but we have to keep an eye out for him intercepting passes. Wonderful. All right, I remember this name from last year, Brian. Servisha Dennis, one of the inside linebackers there. We talked about him last year. He's 6'1", 230, was a 2-star when he came out, 27 tackles, 2 for loss, and a sack. What do you think about him, Brian?
Yeah, he's kind of the guy in the middle of the defense that kind of makes them go and allows that first level of their defense to be so strong along with that defensive line. He's kind of eating up anything that gets through that defensive line there. Does a good job running sideline to sideline, and a good job of preventing any runs up the middle from getting to the second level. And when he does blitz, makes the quarterback rush their throws a lot. we'll work in some delay blitzes and things like that on a regular basis. So he's a guy that we're gonna have to watch out for, not only when we run the ball, trying to get past him up to the second level, but also make sure that he doesn't get to Braxton.
Absolutely. All right. So about 8 minutes ago when we started this segment, I gave y'all some adjusted numbers. I didn't adjust these numbers, and it kind of paints a picture as a team who's on the back half of a defense and a team that's elite. So I look at all 5 of their games, Brian, and third down conversion rate, they are a top 10 conversion rate, giving up less than 27% converting when you have all 5 of their games. Now, the other one, maybe not as much a difference, but showing they're really good in the red zone. They're 9th in the country in the red zone when looking at all 5 of their games. And I wanted to do this because when you take out that big skew game and you look at more of just the Power 5 opponents, and you can do this for us as well, and it'll skew our defensive numbers without a doubt. But when I see a team from going in the top 10, top 15 to being down in the 70s, I feel like maybe their defense is a little bit of a mirage. They have their issues that because they played one really bad team, the numbers are saying they're a lot better than actually what they are.
Yeah, and they're not great on the outside. We should be able to beat them outside with our receivers. So that's one thing to look for, is that they're a good defense, but they're not an elite defense in my mind. They're probably closer to, if you put the numbers in there over the course of a full season, you're probably looking at a defense in the 40s or 50s, not kind of where they're ranking
Yeah.
right now with that outlier game in place. So we will see. I know we're about to talk about what the Hokies are going to have to do here to kind of counter what they bring to the table. So,
And we absolutely have to talk about it. It's the Zeta version. We've continued to move on, and we're going to look at the defense first, Brian, because when a team is coming in scoring this much, moving the ball at will, having some weaknesses, but not having a significant weakness. Like we felt Notre Dame had problems with the offensive line. We saw it rear its head early. Put Buckner in, it changed the dynamic. But I think what we're going to start with here is, although he has some athleticism, there is no way Kenny Pickett is going to run as much as Buckner did or successful or having our defensive end chase him. So we are coming out and saying we got to put Kenny fucking Pickett on his fucking ass a minimum of 10 times hitting him.
yep.
Minimum.
Got to hit him 10 times. I'd like to see at least 4 sacks. That would be a good number to start with. Like I said, it's hard to get to him. We got to. Jay Ham's going to have to dial up something a little creative, and hopefully early on we can at least get some pressure with 4, and then kind of mix up some of the blitzes as we go along there to when they start to adjust to that.
All right. So put Kenny down. Now, the next one, we've talked about the run game. Brian brought up the point that Pickett is part of that run game, but they're still getting 140 yards from a couple guys, which is still not too terrible, especially the way they're passing the ball. And I know we didn't put a number on this, Brian. If they run the ball 30 times, they can't crack 110. We have to keep it in that mid 3. If they're averaging 4 carry, it's going to get ugly.
Yeah, because if they're able to complement their pass attack with a rushing attack that can get them in short, second and manageable, third and manageable situations, that's going to let Kenny Pickett really have his option of who to throw to. We need to keep them behind the sticks, and we want to make them as one-dimensional as possible. I know their strength is throwing the ball around, but if we can take away the run, that strength becomes a little bit less. So that's going to be the goal, is to make sure we contain that rushing attack and make Kenny Pickett have to beat us.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking for. by having that semblance of a rushing attack, Pickett's averaging about 12 an attempt. If they keep the rushing attack, it's definitely going to be 12, maybe even more, the way things have looked the last few weeks. But if you can tell me that he's at like between 8 and 9, and that's only, somebody says that's only 3 yards, but when you throw it as much as they've thrown it this year, where they're throwing it close to 35 times a game, that's
Yep.
100 yards.
Also, the more we can put them in situations where they're passing on obvious passing downs,
Oh yeah,
that means we can come at them. We can make play calls that are specific for that type of play, and that's why it's important to keep them behind the sticks. If we
yeah,
get them in, 2nd and 10, 2nd and 8, if we can do that consistently, they're going to have to start throwing the ball on those downs, and we're going to be able to adjust accordingly and either bring some sort of blitz in, or we can definitely pin our ears back a little bit more than we would if we were in like a 2nd and 5, 2nd and 4 situation.
absolutely. Another one, Brian, you put this on here, and after talking about Mac, reading about Addison, we've got to tackle. I don't think we can afford to tackle like we did last week, because I think these guys, because it's more receivers than running backs, they have potential to go big play.
Yeah, yeah. If we don't wrap them up and they get into space, they've got the speed to turn it into a home run. So limit the run after the catch, and that means tackling. We can't see what we saw, especially in the red zone last week against Notre Dame, having three missed tackles on a single play. Got to wrap up, got to get guys to the dirt. If we can do that, then we at least limit the big play potential of that offense.
Yep. All right, the last piece here, Brian. I've been talking to you about it. We are literally the worst team in the country in the red zone. If you get in the red zone against us, you score touchdowns. You score touchdowns 8 out of 11 times.
Yep.
So 70% of the time you're getting it in. We haven't stopped anybody.
Yep.
Because teams are 11. We haven't even blocked a field goal or stopped field goals. This is, if it doesn't change this week, I mean, there's no chance.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing, is that our defense has shown such significant improvement that it's sad that we're seeing that one statistic be so glaring right now.
Yes, it is.
It seems like as soon as they get in the red zone, we forget how to tackle, forget how to cover. And it's getting a little silly. And I'm not so much concerned about, getting turnovers here, blocking kicks. I just want you, if you just flip or bring that touchdown to field goal ratio at least closer to that 50% mark, if not better, that I'd be fine with that.
I think
if you told me we were, 5 touchdowns, 6 field goals, or 6 touchdowns, 5 field goals, I'd feel okay about it. But we're about 3 touchdowns worse than we should be. We gotta force them to kick 3 more often when they get in the scoring area.
Well, if it was flipped completely, Brian, and it was 8 field goals, 3 touchdowns, I'd be celebrating that number.
Yeah, yeah.
When you get down here, cool, you're going to score on us about 20% of the time for touchdowns. Every other time, you're going to be kicking 3.
Well, it would go back into the mantra of the bend don't break that we've done a really good job at between the 20s. We just need to do a better job inside the 20.
All right. Let's flip it over to the offense, Brian. And again, the version we've got to see. We did not break 30 last week, even with the defensive touchdowns, even with 5 scoring drives. 5. Yep. We did not break 30. I don't think we can win this game in the 20s.
No, we've got to at least get to 30, preferably
more.
mid 30s is probably where we're going to at least have to get against this Pitt team. And it's going to take a little bit of different things to get there. I think the first thing is that we need to run the ball somewhat effectively early in the game and then use that rushing attack to lengthen the game, limit the time that you're going to give Kenny Pickett to score. And if your defense is doing what it should do, and that is occasionally forcing some field goals, then you're working with something there because you've shortened the game, and you've made it so that Kenny Pickett has to be more perfect than he's used to being because he's not touching the ball very much.
Exactly.
The other thing we need to do is get Braxton comfortable in the short passing game and play action early, and that starts with that rushing attack, man.
Yeah, and right now we're not running the ball good at all. We did get creative with Trey on a couple sweeps, a few plays like that, but overall our running game, less BB scrambling and getting great gains. We don't have an effective rushing attack,
No.
and I don't know if it's. I mean, last week quarterbacks ran the ball 17 times compared to 20 for multiple running backs. If we're this deep in a season and they haven't decided on who the 2 or 3 backs are, and they brought Malachi up, the freshman, and I'm fine with that, but it's like we can't get production. Raheem Blackshear's looked like the best guy. I know it irritates you, Brian, that they still cannot use him correctly, because essentially,
well, they're struggling to use him correctly because they end up having to use him as the primary lead back in so many instances.
It's true.
So, and I get that if he's your most effective guy, you've got to use him there, but it's just sad that we haven't found someone that is more effective between the tackles. And it's sad that our offensive line hasn't taken some of the strides I thought they would take, because I thought the offensive line would be okay this year, especially in the run game. And we have not seen that.
No.
We looked at pretty much I didn't think we'd see much drop off in the interior, and I thought that the tackles that we had, at least in the run game, would be good enough to more or less be in the ballpark of last year, just with a less dynamic rushing attack from the actual running back position. Because we knew we weren't getting a Herbert type player at running back this year. We knew that. We knew that Blackshear has other abilities that are beneficial to the offense, but he wasn't going to put out the type of rushing attack in the outside zone and the running game as a whole that we saw from Herbert. But we haven't. I mean, the offensive line just has not played a 4-quarter good game yet.
Nope.
And
we've seen flashes here and there. We've seen quarters here and there. But again, they're not putting it together, and it almost comes to a point you want to question Van Spice of rotating guys, where you're almost sitting there. It's like when you have a successful quarter, just like let that ride. Don't put back in Parker Clements because it's his turn. It goes back to the old, the pieces of it's this guy's turn to run the ball. Well, the other guy just went. His last 2 drives had 8 carries for 40 yards. I wouldn't take him out right now unless he needs a breather.
It's not even game flow specific either. Like that's if you get a lead on a team and you put in your like a Caden Moore or a Silas at a certain position, guys that are more road graders than they are necessarily elite pass protectors, then at least you're kind of catering to the game flow.
Yeah,
that makes sense. What doesn't make sense is just kind of throwing guys out there to see what works. We're going into our 6th game of the year. This should have been figured out by now, and we've only had really one injury to dictate any sort of shuffling.
And that was for one game.
And that was for one game, and Silas was back against Notre Dame. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Figure out your best 5 and only sub if it is game flow specific. If we're behind and we're dropping back a lot, absolutely get your best 5 pass protectors out there.
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa if we get up and we're trying to grind the game out. But don't just keep switching lineups every other drive to see what's working. I mean, we were either up or close to being up in pretty much the duration of the Notre Dame game. There was not a game flow situation where it said we should be subbing offensive linemen in and out.
None whatsoever. And you talked about the offensive line in general, but and I'm going to flip it back to passing game because we saw some elements of that short and mid-range game last Saturday work. That when we were actually driving the ball, that's where the successes were. And I know your big thing is get him comfortable, get him comfortable. But Brian, you've also mentioned as much as we need to get that play action going, looking at the tape, we can't sit there and try to drive the ball 15 plays every time. We've got
No,
to
I
get some
mean,
big ones.
yeah, and the way they go outside, it's very much similar to what Bud used to do. They are going to get up on you. It's going to be some man or some kind of that press cover three. We're gonna have some opportunities to take some shots down the field, and we need to take those. There's going to be one-on-one situations. There's going to be a couple of free release situations. We've got to not be afraid to press the ball downfield when they give it to us, and we got to complete those passes.
All right, so there's the version of what we feel like needs to happen for the Hokies to win. And now it's our prediction time, Brian. Brian, last week you led, so I'm going to lead this week. And as much as I want to win this game, because the last game me and you went to at Lane Stadium was Pitt in 2019 in the 28-0 win. How Narduzzi has acted throughout his time at Pitt. He acts a lot of time like a petulant child on the sidelines.
He's talking shit again about jumping off sides.
He
So
is.
he does not believe karma exists, man. He
3.
Yeah, he jumped off. I mean, last time he said that they jumped off 3 times in that game. We were sitting there in a rain soaked lane. No, it wasn't packed out. It was like what
55?
52. Yeah, somewhere
55.
52, 55, somewhere in that range. Yeah, it was a rainy one.
And but I can't go with this, Brian. We're so inconsistent on offense. They have a good offense. Our defense is good. Is it elite? No. If it was elite, I'd probably flip this. We have a good defense, not an elite defense. Our offense is inconsistent. It's basically third bottom quarter of the entire country. And I think probably it's going to come down to just them getting one extra score. And I'm going 34-27.
Yeah, and I'm pretty much right there with you in terms of the point differential. I'm a little bit lower on both teams. I think our defense probably plays one of the better games, especially considering the competition this year. I think the final is going to be 31-24 Pitt because I don't think that the offense does enough on capitalizing on some of the shots we can take downfield.
Yeah.
I think we do enough moving the football to get probably at least 3 scoring drives in there.
Think it's going to be. Can I say this? I don't think it's going to be last year.
No. I think the combination of this defense being better and it being in lane, I think that alone kind of puts this in a closer matchup than what we saw last year.
Yeah.
If you told me this was in Hines, I would say I could go at least 6 to 10 points higher on the differential there.
Too. And I'll say this: if you ask us, well, what has to happen in this game for him to win? Well, consistency in offense, the scoring drives from last week we had. If we see that, 80% of the time we have a chance. But my big one's going to be this: I think we have to be +2
turnover differential.
+2 in the turnover differential. We were +2.
It's going to be hard to force that. It's going to be hard to force that. Kenny Pickett doesn't turn the ball over very much. I think the opportunity we might have to get him to turn the ball over is probably going to be, either one of those good breaks by Jermaine or Armani on the outside, or if we can get somebody into the backfield and get a sack fumble.
He has a propensity to when he gets sacked to let go of the ball, so maybe that can happen. All right, Brian, let's go ahead and take a look at the 10 additional games, the Saturday Pick'em. Current record, Brian had a miserable weekend, goes 2 games under. He's at 30-32. I had my best weekend of the year. I'm now 4 games over at 33-29, and I'm on a lead. Let's start Friday night in the ACC in the Dome, Brian. Syracuse, Clemson. Clemson is laying 13.5 points. 13 and a half 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 points. 13 and this isn't legal limit, but the way Clemson has played all year and the way
Yeah.
Syracuse has played both on the road and at home, there I don't know what Vegas is on. And I know they build hotels every day because people bet it, but I cannot see Clemson probably wins the game outright, but it's going to be an absolute grind fest. But give me Cuse. I'll take the 13.5 points.
I'm right with you. I think you've got Carrier Dome plus improved rushing attack plus above average defense for Syracuse.
Yep.
I think that's enough to keep this game under 2 touchdowns. Just because I haven't seen enough from Clemson's offense to know that they're able to pull away from anybody. So
Yeah.
give me
In the
Cuse.
over under is 45. And you split that out and take the 13 away, that's at 32. They're saying this is going to be like Clemson 30, Syracuse 16.
Yeah.
Clemson 30? No.
Clemson ain't getting a 30.
Clemson ain't getting to 30. They probably win the game 27-17. All right, let's go to the 12:30 kick in the ACC, Brian. Duke goes to Charlottesville visiting UVA. UVA is the 11-point favorite. What say you on this one?
Man. Duke did me some favors last week. Give me UVA.
All right.
Give me UVA. I think they're going to be able to score enough points. I think Duke is going to be a little inconsistent on offense and probably not have enough on defense to compensate.
That's about where I am too. 69's the over under total. And they're saying Duke's going to score some points, but not enough points to keep with UVA. And I'm with them. I see it probably 2-touchdown game, probably somewhere like 45-30.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that neighborhood. But I'm taking UVA in this one too.
We're essentially saying UVA's offense against Duke's defense is going to be more consistent than Duke's offense against UVA's defense, even though how bad UVA's defense is overall.
Probably the over. The over would probably be a bet in this one because both the defenses aren't good. Both the defenses are easily giving up 30 a game on the field. All right, interesting matchup. Ranked North Carolina State goes up to Boston College. They are a 3-point road favorite. And this is the one I've just been looking at since I laid these out on Tuesday, Brian, and I go back and forth. And it is as good as NC State has played at times this year, they've also had some clunkers of games. And being on the road, this is going to be a 7:30 night kick. Boston College 4-1. I think I'm going to take the home dog here. I'm going to take BC. I don't know if BC wins the game, but I think it's going to be tight enough where BC is going to cover the 3. So I'm going to take BC 3.
All right, I'm going to make up some ground on you here. I'm going NC State, and I think that's going to be a great environment for that game. But I will go with NC State here. I think they've got enough juice to pull it out. Probably just it's still going to be close. It's probably going to be about a touchdown game, but I think it's more than the 3.
All right, over under was 52 on that one. So if you're trying to add it in your head. All right, let's take a look at the 2 biggest frauds.
Fraud alert.
2 biggest frauds in the country. Miami travels to UNC for a 3:30 kick that somehow is still going to be on. Well, no, they moved it to ACC Network. I thought they were having it on ABC. But North Carolina laying 7 points on this one, Brian. What do you think on this game?
I'm going to go UNC, and it's solely because of the De'Aaron King news. And just I feel like that's going to be deflating for that team overall. I think they're going to come out a little hungover. And UNC is going to be able to jump on them enough early where that's going to carry throughout the game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think UNC wins this game, and I think UNC wins this game big. I don't think this is going to be like a tight game. We saw how Miami at times with Garrett King not on the field have struggled to score. UVA took them a while to get going against one of the worst defenses in the country. They pretty much couldn't do anything against Michigan State. They got held under 20. And I know UNC does not have a great defense, but the way Miami's defense has just basically hemorrhaged points all year, I think this is like a 17-point game. I think Sam Howell slings it around. They win like 38-21. Give me Miami or give me UNC on that one. All right, Brian, let's go out of conference. Kind of a big rank matchup of the day in the Big 12. Taking a look at high noon, Texas and Oklahoma State at Texas in Austin. Texas laying 5.5 points after blowing the ungodly lead to Oklahoma and Caleb Williams last week. Where are you on this one?
Man, I see this as a Texas hangover, man.
All right.
I think Oklahoma State does enough to kind of shell shock them a little bit out the gate. I think they come out a little flat after last week, and they probably fight back, but probably not enough to bring it under that 5.5. So I'll take Okie State here.
All right, and I'm kind of with you on that. Okie State has played 3 very solid opponents in Boise, in Kansas State, and in Baylor, and they beat the last 2 by double digits. I don't think the Texas crowd is going to have that big. I'm wondering how many people will even be there, especially after the loss last week. And getting 5.5 points, I think, is enough to make that cover. So I'm going to go with you with Okie State. Yeah. Now let's look at the second Big 12 game we've got on here. 2 Big 12 games. We're actually looking to hopefully find fun offense where BYU, the ranked team, goes down to Baylor, and Baylor, the home unranked team, laying 6.5 points. We're on this one, Brian. I know BYU just a few short weeks ago was inching towards the top 10, and after the loss to Boise by 9 points in Provo, they somehow stayed in the top 20 at 19. And I like what Dave Aranda has got going on at Baylor. Really good defensive coach. The Okie State game was close. They lost by 10. Normally, Gundy has a solid offense. And I think BYU is going to take another loss. And I think maybe Justin Fuente is going to regret his decision not leaving. But tie in. Give me Baylor. Lay the 6.5 points. Baylor wins by 7.
I'm going to go BYU here. I think this is one of the ones I've been kind of waffling back and forth on, but I think this one comes down to the wire. I could see a field goal winning this game late, so I'll take BYU here.
All right, just a few more to pick. Let's go to Cincinnati. And the Gus Malzahn UCF Golden Knights come into town to face Cincinnati. And have you seen this line yet? I'm not sure.
Yeah, 21.
21. I mean, I like Cincinnati and everything. I think Cincinnati is going to win this game. I think 21 is just way, way too much to lay. Because if anything, Malzahn, even against good defenses, has been known to manufacture points.
Yep.
I just think 21 is way, way too much. If it was like 17, I think I'd take Cincy, but 3 touchdowns. Give me UCF and the points.
I'm going to go with UCF as well. I like Cincy a lot. I just think that's too much in a game that matters for both of these teams big time, in terms of both big picture and conference. So I'm going to take UCF. I think they keep it closer than the 21, obviously. I still think it's a pretty start to finish win for Cincy, but it's not one that ever gets out of hand.
All right. Next team we got here. There is no spread, Brian. for Pac-12 After Dark.
Pick 'em.
Arizona State and Utah is a straight pick 'em. That line had been at like 2-1 and finally got down to a pick 'em a little earlier today. What do you think on this one, Brian? You going with the ranked team, the ranked Arizona Sun Devils at 5-1, or the home team Utah at 3-2?
I'm leaning Arizona State, but something about going into Utah is giving me pause. So, you play to win the game, so I'm going to go Zona State.
On Arizona State. All right, you play to win the game. All right. Well, Brian, I am going to completely flip this on you, not so fast. Utah's 2 losses are to 2 ranked teams. They lost to BYU by 9, which we watched that game late.
Yep.
And essentially, Utah kind of pissed it away. And they lost to San Diego State out of the Mountain West, who is ranked 24 and undefeated. They lost them by 2 points. I really think that Utah, this is like a game where Kyle Whittingham, it looks like he's going to lose and he wins every year. They've coming off a blowout win of USC, and then after in a win over Wazoo the week before. Give me that home field. Give me Utah straight up.
All
right. Back to the SEC for the last 2. The first one, as we've all been doing, keeping an eye on Hendon Hooker at Tennessee. He starts the gauntlet for him to see if the numbers are real or if just a competition of what it was. They go play Ole Miss. And, man, the first thing I noticed on this game, Brian, the over-under. You ready for it?
Shoot it.
The over-under this game is 82.5.
Okay, I was going to say it's somewhere around 80, so I was right in that ballpark.
82.5. The spread is Ole Miss laying 2.5 points. So they're saying this game's going to be over 40. As much as I love Hendon and as much as I love Tennessee, I don't think they're going to be able to keep up with Kiffin's offense, with Matt Corral in that group. I think it's competitive. I really think looking at Saturday night, that might be the game to watch of all the ranked teams. That game's going to kick at 7:30, and it's going to be an absolute shootout. I think Ole Miss wins 52-42, so I will take Ole Miss and lay the 2 points.
All right. We're gonna differ here. I think Tennessee pulls this one out. I think they have just enough on defense to keep Ole Miss from completely blowing their doors off. I think Hendon comes up with a little magic late. I think this is an outright win by Tennessee. It's going to come down to the wire, though.
All right. Brian taking the 2 with the home team.
We'll go moneyline Tennessee.
Moneyline Tennessee. Put as part of his going to be part of your parlay this week. Yeah. All right, last game is Kentucky, Georgia. Big game of the day. 2 ranked teams. Kentucky number 1 in the country, and Georgia Kentucky 11 in the country. Mark Stoops has Georgia rolling. I told my buddy Mike from work the other day, if Mark Stoops wants to, after this season ends, any big position open, he could probably go get. He's 54 years old. He's been in the coaching game for 30 years. He's seen it all. He obviously he's been at Kentucky since let me get it up. I think he's been at Kentucky since 13. Yeah. That's Mike Stoops. Mark Stoops. He's been at Kentucky since 13, and obviously what he's done in Kentucky is crazy. He's 5 games over 500 with that program in the SEC, with some 10-win seasons, some 8-win seasons. And obviously he was with his brother when they won a national title. I think he can go wherever he wants. And in this game, Brian, the line is Georgia laying 23 points. What do you say?
Yeah, I like Georgia a lot. I don't like them that much. And I think, Kentucky has played some good football this year. And as you said, consistently, I mean, they've been in, say what you will about them historically, but Kentucky since 2013, since Mark Stoops has been there, has been a better overall program than Virginia Tech. And
They have.
it's crazy to say that shit, but, it's true. And I think they keep it closer than the 23.5, or what was the line? Was it 23? 24.
3 touchdowns
Yeah.
and a field goal. I'm with
Yeah,
you.
I can't put that much out there.
That's way too much. And I'm trying to see here if J2 Daniels is back this week. Give me a second here. I want to just see if maybe this is what's doing it. If you see something, Brian, I'm trying to get it here. All right. Even if he was back, I still couldn't lay 24 in his first game back. Give me Kentucky. Give me all the points, everything, because I think that's just way too much. Stoops has a good enough defense. I think he'll keep it a grind fest. I think Georgia pulls away a little late, and it's probably like a 31-14 game, but nowhere near the 24 you're talking about. Brian, anything broken over the last hour and a half?
I'm not seeing anything fun. Everything looks pretty low key, man.
All right, everything's low key. All right, well, that'll wrap up this episode of the Boundary Corner Podcast. I am Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler.
Visit our website at boundarycornerbt.com to listen to all of our episodes. While you're there, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Subscribe on our YouTube account and your favorite podcast source, including Spotify, Amazon, and Apple Podcasts. As always, we let our buddy Jason Long, who's down in Roanoke, play us in, play us out. Catch him on Spotify and Apple Music. We thank you for listening. And as always, let's go.
Hokies.